what's the moment you guys realized you weren't cool anymore? Was there like an exact moment that you can like pinpoint where you're like no longer with the trends and you don't know what's going on? Because I had my moment. I was listening to a podcast yesterday and they were talking about some trend that was going on TikTok that it's not going on anymore, but had something to do with a Grimace milkshake. I have no idea what the fuck that is.
No idea.
It completely passed me up. So it was just like one of those things where, like, I don't know what's going on in the world anymore from like a trends standpoint.
What is a Grimace milkshake?
I still don't know. I don't
know if I want to
know. See, the fact that none of us actually know proves my point.
I will say that I've known for a while, but when you have kids, you 100%.
Yeah, it's a Grimace birthday shake. Yeah, berry flavored.
There was apparently like a whole thing where
they sold it last year.
People were on TikTok were drinking it, and they were like they were claiming that they were getting like sick, or like they were acting like it was like influencing them in some way, or like some bullshit.
Let's bring up the fact that one, the ice cream machine never works at McDonald's, so they couldn't have had milkshakes. So it was probably fake ice cream.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back for Ride the Pine, episode 45. I am Sean Sproat. That is Adam Freeman and Kenny Hutton. As you can see, no Cameron May this week. He is playing softball. He couldn't make it. He's got his dreams, and we're going to let him follow them. What is our topic this week, Adam?
All right, so I heard this on the radio the other day. I can't take 100% credit for it. I believe it was 101 ESPN on the morning drive. They brought up an interesting topic. Would you guys rather have parity across a major sports league? So we'll talk like EPL, NHL, NBA, even like golf and football, like just across the major sports. Or would you rather have a dynasty / superstar that runs the table on everything? I found it as a very interesting question because I personally believe that it varies depending on the sport.
I do think it's a wonderful question, but I will argue a point I don't want to make. I do think sports are better when there's a villain. Think about Tom Brady. Think about how much fun the NFL was during that era. Think about it now with the Chiefs, right? Hell, even take this to somebody like Conor McGregor. Ultimate heel, right? Yeah. Like, think about that. The two best words in UFC are "and new." And parity, though, like, I guess my question would be, and Adam can expand on this, does that mean theoretically you win a championship every 30 years? Or what is truly parity?
So when I think of parity, I think of that there isn't the long run of champions. So like the NFL always says we promote that, anybody can win a Super Bowl. Well, that's not freaking true. Let's just look at the NFL. Not everybody can win a Super Bowl. They have a lot of dynasties. They're just kind of spread out. You have the Chiefs that are in one now. You had the Patriots that were the early 2000s. Unfortunately, I would probably lump the Cowboys kind of in there, even though I think they only won one Super Bowl, right, in the 90s. You have the Steelers that had their run. So they have a lot of dynasties that kind of go through. But, like, honestly, I kind of think of parity as more towards maybe the MLB or maybe even the NHL now is how they go. In my opinion, I agree. I 100% want the heel. I want the team that my team is trying to beat, and I want to be the team that beats them. I want the Rams to beat the Patriots, or what are the Rams? I want the Blues to go out, and in reality, right now, it's probably the Bruins. I would say would probably the villain in the NHL, other than the Golden Knights, which they can just rot in hell.
Golden Knights,
yeah. But they've only won one Stanley Cup. Like that, they're not, and they've only been to 2. So
they've only been around for 5 years, though. So.
Right, but it's
You know-
relatively recent. Like another thing that I heard, or I think I saw it on Twitter, was like for us locally, St. Louis and Boston. You have what the Patriots did to the Rams, and you have what the Blues and the Bruins have done since really the '60s. If you really want to go back, you have Bobby Orr, all that stuff. But in the end, like the other side of it is that in the NFL right now, I don't have a team. I'm still a free agent. I probably will remain that way. Other than the Model Americans, let's hope that we have a better year this year. It's probably not going to happen because I suck at fantasy football, but either way. But in the NFL, I loved seeing a team that has an opportunity to win. I would love to see a team upset the Chiefs. And Kenny, you brought up a great point too. It goes beyond the major sports, even into like MMA or even boxing for that matter. Like MMA, you're right. The best words in MMA are "and new" by far.
I mean, I think it's got to be your outlook, right? Like between 06 and 11, we witnessed 2 World Series, and I loved the Cardinals being bad guys. Like I truly did. There was a shirt out there after 2014, I think. It said, "Oh, another NL championship," or whatever it said. I was just like, I want this shirt.
Yes.
So I think it's all relative. But I think for me in my situation, I'm looking at an expanded college football playoff and going, yes, we're gonna have a shot. Like true parity in college football has potential now. Because if you look at the college football playoff since its inception, it was Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. Like it's been the same 5 teams primarily, and now this year was a little bit better. I don't like Michigan, but at least somebody new won. But now cat's out of the bag. It's going to be awesome this year.
But even in that sense, Kenny, using Mizzou as the example now, would you rather that they go to the playoffs and they beat a team like Georgia that has been the national champion for 3 out of 4 years, something like that, or whatever the number is that he's on a run with? Or would you rather them beat Ohio State? For example, I know it's still a blue blood, I know it's still a big name, but Ohio State really hasn't truly. I mean, they're relevant in a sense of being the blue blood, being the team that's at least in the championship or the 4, but they haven't really won a national title like Georgia or even Bama has. I would so much prefer Mizzou upsets a team like, not necessarily upset, but beats a team like Georgia to say, hey, we stopped the dynasty.
Look, I think if you're a fan of a sport, of a team sport driven by playoffs, right? EPL is completely different because it's just the race to the top. The goal should be playoffs. And you look at a team, how do I want to word this? I kind of lost my train of thought there, but like a dynasty isn't necessarily like winning either. You could argue that the Blues had a dynasty for the 25 years in a row they made the playoffs, right? Like, I think dynasty is a little too
I think
funky
it's a little
of a term.
different on how you phrase it, though. I think they're a dynasty in the sense that they're consistent, but if you are getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs every other year, I wouldn't qualify that as a dynasty, especially in a league where half the teams make the playoffs.
And if you're losing to different opponents each time, then that's an argument for parity.
Correct.
Absolutely, Sean.
Can you mention the Premier League? Let's focus in really quickly, and we'll kind of go like sport by sport a little bit. But let's talk with the Premier League, just because they're the most recent title winner of all the sports.
As long as you promise not to bring up my team.
Can't promise that. So Man City beat West Ham 3-1 this past weekend to win their 4th straight Premier League title. They're the only Premier League club ever to win 4 straight. Arsenal finished second. Sorry, Cameron, if you're watching. That would have been Arsenal's first title if they would have pulled it off since the 2003-2004, the Invincibles. The Premier League is there is no parity in the Premier League whatsoever. it was rebranded from the old, I think it was used to be called First Division. It was rebranded to Premier League in 1992. Since 1992, 7 clubs have won. That's it. 7. Quick question. Do you think you can name the 7?
Absolutely.
Hit me.
Okay. Man U.
Yes.
Man City.
13. Man City has 8.
Chelsea.
Chelsea have 5.
Liverpool.
Liverpool has 1. 1.
I know. Blackburn Rovers. That's the one you thought I wasn't going to get.
That is correct. They have 1.
Leicester City and Arsenal.
Yes, Arsenal
Boom,
have Leicester City has 1, Arsenal has 3. That's it though. That's it. So if you are a Crystal Palace fan, if you're a Sunderland fan, if you're a Leeds fan, or whomever else in the Premier League, the moment the first kickoff happens, you know you do not have a chance to sit at the top of that table. You don't have a chance to win the league at all unless you upset 5,000 to 1 odds like Leicester did.
What would be the preferred dynasty in that sport? Is it preferred to have the dynasty? Because now in thinking, and I guess MLS is different because of how it's laid out compared to everywhere else in the world. But in, let's call it global soccer, is it better for the top divisions or even the divisions down to have a team that is dominant, which when you have relegation and promotion, it's a lot harder in the lower leagues, but in the top tiers, you have a team that is dominant, like let's say Man City is right now. Would it be bigger? And the 3 of us can't really talk about it because we haven't had an opportunity to do it in a long time. But would it be better if Arsenal, would it have been bigger for them to win this year for a fan like Cameron and upset Man City? Or would it be better for them to all have a chance to be able to do it?
See, it's hard to answer that question because all of the numbers suggest that the Premier League and like the Bundesliga, Serie A, like all these big major leagues have flourished over the fact that there is no parity over the last 20 years.
Exactly.
So it's hard to argue against it considering the TV numbers that the Premier League produces is just inflated during the Manchester United run, during the Man City run. And soccer or football, if you're nasty, is just different because of hooliganism, that it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if you won or lost. You just fucking hate the guy across from you.
Actually, Sean, I will put a caveat on that point. It doesn't matter if you win or lose as long as you're not relegated.
Yes.
And I think that's what it has created, a position where you're not relegated. Unless you're a team like a Luton Town, sorry, pronunciation, that Men in Blazers, I'm assuming it's Raj, pointed out that it's like they're going back to the championship with a fatter wallet.
Yes.
And they will.
Now that puts them at the advantage. Maybe they could build up another team because the championship is absolutely loaded right now. When you consider Leicester City ran away with the lead, what was it, 96 points? Leeds got 90 points. They are the highest total point getter in the Champions League history without securing an automatic bid.
Correct. Yeah. But Luton is kind of a one-off because most clubs who get promoted and immediately go back down, they actually have to sell off players because they spent so much money to get to the Premier League because of financial fair play rules. They have to sell now. So the likelihood of them coming back up is not great. And if they do come back up, they're going right back down. See Norwich City for 4, 5, 6 years or whatever it was. Luton's a little different. Just caveat to your caveat.
But even in that situation, though, Kenny, it is all about not being relegated. But again, you go to the teams of, like, for us, Tottenham, Chelsea, Sean, I don't even know who you support at this point. And then like even with my buddy this from Newcastle, like it is a big deal once you get to be a top club to be able to get into Euros, to get into Champions League. Like, that all makes a huge difference. It's different for the lower teams. It's different for the teams that are constantly going back and forth between top 2 and 3. You know, that makes a big difference. But I think that in the end, for the bigger clubs, still.
But is that better?
But
though?
I'm not going to
because
sit here.
I don't know.
Sorry, Kenny. I didn't mean to cut you off. But is that better because in the Premier League it's a race to 4th for Champions League or race
Right.
to 6th for Europa League, and it's a race to not finish below 17th.
Yeah.
If you finished 17th in the Premier League, that's a successful season because you get the monetary bump for staying in the league for another year.
Right.
Well, and that was going to be kind of my point is I don't feel bad for any of these clubs because they all agreed to this model, right?
Yes,
like
right.
Especially the EPL. There's a great book. I'm going to look up the title of it. I'll make reference to it here in a minute. But the big 6 strong-armed what was the Champions League in their first division into this Premier League. Because they wanted more revenue. They wanted those TV deals. They wanted to break away from what they were dealing with Sky and yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel bad for any of these teams basically signing off on this with the FA. So I'm going to look up that book real quick.
Yeah. So
it's called The Club, I think it is.
The Premier League is just a different monster on its own. And here with MLS, we have parity of all of the major sports in the United States. MLS has the most parity. And I actually found this this thesis paper written by Kevin Allwell from UConn. This was back in 2020, but it's analyzing competitive balance in professional sports and takes a look at all of the major sports in the United States. And it basically uses a mathematic formula to determine how much parity they have across the board. MLS has essentially twice as much parity as the next league. The worst league on this scale is NBA. And we can kind of talk about that in a little bit. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they have super teams and they're one of the few sports that do. But it's hard to compare MLS to EPL or really any other league in the world because they're completely different from top to bottom, financially, on the field performance, structurally, everything is different.
So then let's go to that next one. You said NBA is the least parity, correct?
Correct.
And I do agree. But in that sense, that is what makes the NBA great. You look at the Lakers and the Celtics have 17 total championships. The Warriors have 7. The Bulls have 6. Spurs, I think, are next with 5. And then you have a list of just other teams after that have 1 or 2 and 0, obviously. But you go back to what has been the most popular way to build a franchise up until probably the last 5 years. And granted, I don't watch as much NBA and I have a point on that here in a minute. But you have all these teams that are trying to beat Wade, Bosh, and LeBron, Durant, Steph, and Clay. I would even throw Jordan and Pippen. They're trying to beat that team. Like, that is what makes the NBA great, is they have the dynasty. They have that team that is there, that is winning, that everybody's trying to upset.
Yeah, but they have that. And those teams, they win in chunks. So like, the Chicago Bulls won for, 6 to 8 years, whatever it was. And then Golden State won for a chunk. Miami before that, like the Lakers before that, they go in chunks. So they kind of trade positions. So your team might have a chance to win multiple championships in 20 years, only if you are a major market.
Yeah, the major market makes a big difference. Or picked by the NBA to become the next major market.
Well, this isn't the Chicago Blackhawks and Connor Bedard.
It's close. But in the NBA right now, I think what is awesome is that we have the conference finals going on. We have Dallas and Minnesota. Dallas, I believe, has never won one, correct?
No, they won. They won in 2001.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Dirk Nowitzki.
Timberwolves, I don't think, have won one.
Bring your ass.
Timberwolves have never won.
Didn't Kevin Garnett? I thought
he won with Celtics.
He won with Celtics.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, in the East, you have obviously Boston, and then they're playing. Who the hell are they playing?
The Celtics are playing the Pacers.
The Pacers. Yeah, and the Pacers don't have any NBA championships, but obviously the Celtics do. And neither of these teams really, other than probably the Celtics, have really been relevant to the extent of, a championship team in the last, let's call it 5 years. Maybe Dallas a little bit, because Dallas had, but I would say probably the last 2 years with Luka. But I think that's what makes the NBA nice. Now, getting to my point about the NBA, totally different topic with them. Can we just agree that they need to shrink down their playoff schedule to like a best of 3, maybe? Because I feel like no team shows up, or one team only shows up for each of the first 6 games, and then they play game 7 and it's a close matchup. Like, let's just get rid of the other games. Let's just do a best of 3. You guys can each win one, and then you guys can figure it out from there.
What's funny is they're probably going to add more games. They're never going to take any away.
We don't need, and even like the game right now. I mean, it's close, but it's not as close as it should be. I'm watching freaking Rangers and Panthers on another TV, and this game's been relatively close. Like, NHL games are always relatively competitive. They do have the obviously blowouts, but anyways, so parity in the NBA is minimal.
But that's why this year specifically in the NBA is great, because you had a little bit of the both. You had the big markets who were really good all year, like the Knicks, and I'll even like, I don't know if I would call them a big market, but currently as far as like dominance goes, I would say the Nuggets, they were up there all year long. The Lakers, they were the Lakers. So you had that, you had the big markets, but then your Final Four, besides Boston, are really all teams that haven't really sniffed this ever or in a long time. Like the Mavericks and Timberwolves this is only the second time these two teams have ever played in the postseason. The first time they matched up was in 2002, whenever, Adam, the series were only 3 games and Dallas won 3-0. So you kind of get a little best of both worlds this year in the NBA.
What other sports were down at the bottom or up at the top on that list? Do you have in front of you?
I can. Let me pull it back up here.
All right, let's jump to hockey. Kenny, you're the hockey expert. Hockey is going on right now.
Sure.
Where's Parity versus Dynasty in hockey?
I mean, outside of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the little run they had, the hardest thing to do is repeat in the NHL. Like, 16 and 17, the Penguins did it, and nobody's done it since. And I think before that, nobody did it until, I should have looked it up.
Wasn't it the Oilers?
Back to back. Yeah, I believe so.
Or no, maybe the Penguins. The Penguins might have done it in the 90s.
Did they do that in? Okay, so back to
98, 99, maybe 90 is around that range, around that time frame. Might have been earlier than that.
I think it was earlier.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So Tampa Bay went, back to back. Penguins went back to back, and then before that, the Red Wings went back to back in 96, 97.
Oh yeah, 96, 97. And then the Oilers were before them, I believe.
The Penguins did in 90 and 91 too. So it looks like when the Penguins win, they win in a bunch
twice. Interesting.
Let's see here. The Canadians hold the most consecutive streak at 5 seasons in a row. They hold the number 2 position at 4 seasons in a row. Islanders went 4 in a row. The Leafs went 3 in a row.
That's kind of crazy.
Called the St. Louis Eagles went 2 in a row.
You don't think about the Islanders really when you
that Islanders run was nasty though. Like that was.
Yes, it was.
That was a crazy team.
But Kenny, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, good night to have the Florida Panthers at -1.5 goal. They just put in their third on an empty net. So, all 4 of the teams that are remaining. The last Stanley Cup won, I believe, by our research, was 1999 by the Dallas Stars, when somebody Brett Hall kicked in a goal.
Cheater.
So
fuck that guy.
The Canucks have never won. The Rangers haven't won since '94, and the Florida Panthers have never won. So,
and and to counter literally that point right there, and also your point about it's hard to win back-to-back in the NHL, according to this research paper, the NHL is the second worst when it comes to parity.
See, but I think that's skewed though, because
it's probably skewed from early on, whenever the Canadians went on their run and all those dynasties kind of you were just talking about. But it is really interesting that no one is really close to them in the NBA. They're kind of on their own.
So, okay, I do have a question about that then.
Mm-hmm.
So you said MLS is the least, right?
Correct.
Is MLB the next?
So MLS is the best when it comes to parity, followed by the NFL, then followed by
no freaking way.
Then followed by Major League Baseball, then NHL, NBA.
I mean, the only sense that I would say that NHL is that low is that you have to be one of the top, let's say, 2 teams in the league. In each East and West right now, you have to be one of the top 2 teams to really compete for a Stanley Cup. But other than that, the NHL is by far the hardest championship to win in all of sports. To win the Stanley Cup is the hardest thing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I probably should have said this earlier. This formula that's used, it doesn't just account for like championships, it's accounting for head-to-head matchups over the last however many years. So it's literally looking at parity across the sport. And also it does try to take into effect the amount of games that are played, but I don't think it does that great of a job of doing so. There's a couple fallacies in there, but it does try to look at the fact that at the time that this was written, that NFL had 16 games per season, NBA 82, MLS 34, so on and so on and so on. And Adam, yes, fallacy is a word. You can look it up after we're done.
I know it's a word, but I was worried about what the other option of that word is.
Does that mean that it is only tracking the league as? I mean, like, I guess my question is about that is, like, is it tracking the fact that the Stanley Cup is the oldest trophy and the teams that have played for the Stanley Cup, this is their parity? Or is it what was the NHL has been around for X amount of years? Or what is the NBA has been around for? So, basically, I guess my question is like, when you look at the NHL up until 1970 or 1967, there were 6 teams. Then it becomes 12. Is it looking at the modern day NHL that arguably starts in 67, or is it looking at information that include the precursor, the original 6?
Based on what I see here, I think it is going back to when the league was actually created. So I think it is including the years where there were 6 teams. So that does skew the numbers. And actually, there's a part of it where he mentions transitional probabilities, where the probabilities change from year after year based on those types of factors. So,
which would also affect the NBA, because I believe they are relatively the same in that they had a history of a smaller league. I don't know the exact numbers, but they didn't boom until they merged with the ABA. So.
Yeah, back in the 70s. Correct. Yeah. So, but it's still it's a baseline to look at. I don't think it supports or like proves one way or the other.
So then going to the other end of the spectrum, you go to the NFL being the second most even league, this highest rated as far as parity goes. I don't believe that in one bit. Like, there are only a select few amount of NFL teams that are going to win the Super Bowl this year. And you could say that year after year after year. You can, just like the EPL, you can almost take a handful of teams out of contention this time of year before the season even starts.
But arguing what Sean basically just said is that, it's taking some precursors in. The new modern day NFL includes 18 games. It also includes an expanded playoff roster. Before, you had to be one of the, 6 teams or 4 teams or whatever it is. And that's probably why baseball has got better parity too, because you had to be one of 2 division winners to even get to the playoffs. So this makes sense.
And not to the extent of NBA, but in the NFL, if you land like an incredible franchise quarterback, then you're good for the next 10 years. And so when we look at just specifically the New England Patriots, we all remember how dominant they were for 18 years, how good they were. They were incredible. You take that into account, and then you look at their entire history. They only have a franchise win percentage of 0.55. They've only won 55% of their games because how terrible they were before they got Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I guess if you look at it as the season in its entirety from week 1, game 1, all the way to championship, then yes, that is probably pretty accurate because you look at spreads in the NFL and you very rarely get more than a 7-point spread. So they're all pretty close. Occasionally you're going to get that 10-point when you get a team like right now, Kansas City that plays, I don't even know at this point. The Vikings maybe this year, the Jets, but without Aaron Rodgers, definitely the Jets. You'll get a 10-point swing like that, but even then, everybody makes a massive deal about it being a double-digit spread. And most people end up taking the underdog on that one. But I mean, still, like I still think of when I go back to parity, I go, who's going to win a title? Mm-hmm. Who, like we talked about in the very beginning, who has the best chance to win a title? And I don't think that that's parity in the NFL. And maybe the salary cap makes a bigger deal now too, though, because you're talking about now quarterbacks that are getting paid $50+ million a year. And yes, granted, the salary cap keeps extending out and growing, but you have a quarterback taking up 25% of your salary cap. The Bengals are running into an issue with that. And you pay Joe Burrow, and now you're going to lose T. Higgins. You still have to pay Jamar Chase. You have to keep drafting the guys below him. One person doesn't necessarily win you a title anymore. The Bears are not going to win if Caleb Williams is what everybody thinks that Caleb Williams is going to be. I don't think he will be. They're not going to win a Super Bowl just because of Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about this, so I want to bring it back to the NHL real quick and the NBA. I want to give the NBA their due. Mm-hmm. Who are we picking in each of the series? So, first game of the NHL conference finals started tonight. Florida Panthers, my pick, just beat the Rangers 3-0. I know Sean said he was Rangers were a Stanley Cup pick.
I had
still riding with the Rangers.
Before the playoffs started, I picked Rangers versus Stars, and I don't think I can deviate from that now. So the fact that they lost tonight kind of sucks, but yeah, I'm still going Rangers over Stars.
I have the same thing, and I'm not changing it after game 1. I watched game 1, and yeah, the Panthers look really good. But again, I don't remember if I said it to you guys or if I said it in another text that was the other night. You had the Rangers and Stars were on the same night, and after watching those 2 games, I said the Stanley Cup championship is coming out of this, or Stanley Cup champion is coming out of this night. It'll either be Stars, and I forgot who it was, but yeah, it's going to end up being Dallas and New York would be my guess. But Panthers look really good tonight, that's for sure.
Well, how do they
Panthers? I'm rolling with the Panthers.
I like it. How do they both get here? First of all, the Rangers won the President's Trophy, so I don't know if you believe in that curse or not. They swept the Capitals in round 1, and they won in 6 against the Hurricanes. Florida is in the Eastern Conference Finals for the 2nd straight season. They beat Tampa in 5, and they beat the Bruins in 6. I did put down on for each little matchup some like little keys to success and what do I believe. If the Rangers continue to dominate special teams, they're the best team on the power play and power kill if you take out the Oilers because they've been really good. They're playing -1 hockey 5v5. So if they get dominant performance from Shesterkin, which by the way, he has been the best goalie in the playoffs this year so far. He's got a 2.401 goals against average, a 925 save percentage. If they get that from him, I don't think that the Florida Panthers have a chance because the Florida Panthers are the exact opposite. They're a hard-hitting team. They're bruisers. They dominate 5-on-5. This matchup's so interesting to me because it's two teams with completely different identities, and it's really rare that you get that this late in the season.
And what team does the Florida Panthers play like?
Are we going to say the 2019 Blues?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Because they're going to hit you, they're going to play defense, and they're going to take care of. And that, you know what? Where they separate themselves from where the St. Louis Blues were is they actually have a legitimate superstar in Matthew Tkachuk.
Yeah.
Cannot forget Barkov as well. And hell, they even got Vladimir Tarasenko, who's been rejuvenated in Florida. The fountain of youth must really be down there. I don't think this series is even close.
Wow. Do you think they can get the type of performance out of Bobrovsky that they need, or does it not even matter from that point?
Yeah. Okay. Let me put a caveat on this. This is going to come down to how Bob plays, right? Like he's got to match Shesterkin, and he did it tonight. Clean sheet, right? Like,
yeah.
I think the Rangers are a little too much flash. And that's okay. They're still a great hockey team. I slept on them a lot. I forgot they won the President's Trophy. But the Florida Panthers are built different. Paul Maurice is a great coach who, let's be honest, those Winnipeg Jet teams were always right there. They were always favorites. And like you said, sometimes you just got to get a change of scenery and a change of voice.
And a better goalie.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see, because Florida's already done what Florida needs to do. You've taken one game on the road.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's true.
So even if the Rangers come back and win game 2, who gives a shit? Because now you're coming back to your barn and you're going to hope you're going to take 2 of them from them. And then it's gravy, right? Then you got the game advantage and you can go back to New York and potentially lose and then come back home and win it, right? So that puts you in the driver's seat. So I think Florida is going to play for the Stanley Cup again, and I think they're going to play the Dallas Stars.
And I think at this point, no matter what the matchup becomes, we're going to in for a hell of a Stanley Cup final. Because you could put Florida against Dallas or Edmonton, and it's going to be a great matchup. You can put either of the Western Conference teams against the Rangers, and it's going to be a great matchup. Like, you have, honestly, in my opinion, you have the Stars that are probably the deepest team as far as top of the roster to the bottom of the roster. You have the most talented in the Oilers, as far as like high-end talent, I would say, is probably the Oilers. And like Kenny said, I think the most skilled all around is probably New York. And then the Panthers have everything and the physicality to be able to make up for anything that they're lacking on the back end. Like, you have so many opportunities to make a great matchup. I don't think we're going to go wrong no matter what. I think Panthers Stars would be a hell of a series. You're going to have 2 teams that are very heavy. That is the new style that wins in the NHL, especially this late in the season. Like, again, the Blues kind of started that trend. Vegas has kind of played into that trend as well. I think that is the way to go. I picked the Rangers originally just because, really because of special teams. Is that Shesterkin can keep up with any keeper or any netminder in the entire league. I almost said keeper, thinking of different sports. But you have the power play and the penalty kill, and that team has both of those. They're not the greatest team, even strength.
Some quick things to note about the Stars and Oilers matchup. The Stars have been like really put to the test this postseason, and they've passed with flying colors, but they beat the Golden Knights in 7. They beat Colorado in 6. Those are 2 really tough matchups. I am concerned that do they have the legs to go with such a high flying team like the Oilers? The Oilers played Kings in 5. The Canucks was a tough series. I'll give them that. The Canucks was a tough series. They won in 7. Quick, fun little facts about the Oilers. Leon Draisaitl is finally doing what he's paid to do. He leads all of playoffs in this year in points. So it's taking Draisaitl to finally show up in the playoffs for them to get to this level. That's the point where I don't know if he can continue that against a hard hitting stars. And this other fact about the Oilers that I found to be just absolutely ridiculous, including this year, they've won 40 playoff series. That's the most in the league since they joined the NHL in 1979, 1980. They have 3 more than the Penguins and the Red Wings. I didn't realize how good the Oilers have been. I guess I attribute a lot of that to the Gretzky years. It's still really impressive.
The only thing I will say, and part of this I get from Jamie Rivers was talking about it today, is the Stars are a deep team. They run 4 lines, and they're good 4 lines.
Yes.
They have 7 NHL defensemen. You can really only play 6 every night. So one of them is sitting up in the booth and waiting to go. And then Jake Ottinger is way better than Skinner when it comes to being in net. Like, yes, you have McDavid, you have Draisaitl on the other end of it, and that is a hell of a tandem. I'm pretty sure both of them have 20-plus points in, the 12 games, something like that. That's insane when you think of the numbers that they're putting up. But that is all that they have. They're not a deep team. Yes, it's tough, but I think Vancouver was overrated for where they finished. They should not have taken the Oilers to 7. Let's put it that way.
Vancouver's a year away.
Probably, but they're also on their 3rd goalie, and it still took 7 games for the Oilers to beat them.
I think that series is different if Demko's in net.
Yeah,
and Bosher doesn't have a blood clot. Like, I think honestly, as soon as they heard that, like, they played like they didn't care in Game 7. In all honesty,
right?
I think as long as Dallas doesn't go down 2-0, I think they can afford to lose Game 1. Because I think they're going to beat the brakes off the Oilers. Like, not necessarily win the series in 4 or 5. They're going to physically wear down the Oilers. I think this is going to be reminiscent of the Blues beating the crap out of the Sharks.
Wow.
Like, by the end of the series, I think the Oilers will just break down. Like, it'll be we can't take it anymore. Because I don't think they have anybody on their team that can play that physical style. Dallas's personality is that, because you morph into your captain, right? A lot of these good teams take their captain's, mentality. And Jamie Benn just is an awful human being, and Dallas has taken that over. But guess what? He's still a good hockey player. He's annoying. He's a pest. They're going to bring the hammer. And I can't wait for the Stars to play the Panthers.
Do we want to even talk
about I hope Oleg is happy.
Do we want to talk about the other conference finals?
I'll pick the Timberwolves and I'll pick the Pacers.
Well, let's briefly talk about it. We need to mention it.
Mavericks.
Okay, let's talk about Mavericks and Timberwolves. I mentioned earlier it's only the second time these two teams have met in the postseason. The first one was back in 2002. Minnesota won that series 3-1. Minnesota won the season series 3-1. This season series 3-1. That was prior to Dallas making the trades at the deadline, though, so they're a much stronger team than they were during that time. They brought in Gafford and PJ Washington at the trade deadline. So I have the Mavericks winning this series. I've got them winning it in 6. I don't know if that's a homer of me because I live in North Texas, although I'm not a Mavericks fan. But I think the Timberwolves Cinderella story ends in Dallas.
And the other side?
And the other side is the Celtics and the Pacers. The Celtics are the only 1 seed to make it this far. Pacers, it's their first Eastern Finals appearance since 2014. This season, Celtics won the season series 3-2. That does include the in-season tournament. I don't know how much you want to take into account there. Celtics are probably going to dominate this. I think, unfortunately, the Pacers just don't have the star power to keep up and to defend St. Louis's own Jason Tatum. So
I was going to say, did I say Pacers? Because my rule is default to root for the St. Louis guys, so I got to go with Tatum.
Ooh, even if he's on a Boston team?
Yeah, I mean,
don't know any different.
Yeah.
My
rule is
that I generally
St. Louis,
follow is the Lakers. So
St. Louis guy or Mizzou alum. So as
Mm.
much as it pained me, I was like, maybe the Denver Nuggets would be nice because Michael Porter Jr. And then, yeah.
Well, the only way the Pacers win the series is if they keep Tatum on the perimeter and they keep him off the foul line. And I just don't see either of that happening, unfortunately. So it's probably going to be Celtics Mavericks. I think it would be better for the NBA, back to our parity point, if Timberwolves and Pacers came out and faced in the finals, but it's not going to happen.
Can I bring up one more point and then we can wrap it up? It is absolutely criminal that the NBA is getting rid of the TNT. I don't even know what the name of this inside NBA or whatever the hell it is on TNT, and getting rid of Ernie Johnson and Shaq and Charles Barkley, because they are by far the best pregame show, hands down. That's game day. That's, even I would say the NHL on TNT is probably even second at that point. Like, they're the best pregame, postgame, any sort of breakdown possible. And even the crossover that TNT has had with Shaq doing hockey has been absolutely phenomenal.
Yes.
And TNT eliminating that is just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, TNT didn't eliminate it. They lost the NBA contract.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, that's their fault. They're dumb.
Oh, okay.
You should have paid. That's the only reason that people are watching NBA games. Like, legitimately, let's think about this. You have Dallas and Minnesota. What in the NBA, how many markets are truly watching the NBA or the conference finals right now for those two teams? Other than the local markets, I have it on right now because of the pre and post game. That's it.
Well, they've only played one game, so we don't know. But I would imagine probably more than you think. In my opinion, you guys are a little jaded towards the NBA because you're not in an NBA market, so you don't give a shit.
No, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
I think a lot of people are probably going to watch. It's not going to be Lakers Golden State. It's not going to reach those levels, but there's going to be a lot of people watching these games.
Listen, on my hierarchy of sports leagues that I care about, the NBA is arguably probably dead last. And that's in a list that includes the UFL. By the way, call is the mother effing law. Playoffs, baby.
I think that's a great place to call it. Cacaw is the law. Great episode, guys. Congrats on 45. We're almost to 50. We need to plan our 50 special. I don't know what we're going to do, but we need to figure that out. So Adam, I guess that's your job. Any parting words, guys, before we call it?
Follow our socials, but nobody on this that's here actually knows our socials. It's something with Pod Ride the Pine.
Pod Ride the Pine. It's on everything, on Twitter or X, if you want to call it that, on Instagram. We have a TikTok that we've almost practically never used. We should probably also figure that out.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, right? That's probably it. But those are we struggle when our social media intern's not here.
Right. And I think we're through crazy schedules. We should be more on time with stuff too.
All right, guys, let's get out of here. Everybody, enjoy your week, and we will see you soon. Have a good night. Bye.